$104% tariffs in China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, and sell it back here. Never has an administration.
400% tariffs? What would that look like?
I want Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. This is not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed. If we wipe out any business there, because we are still 39% of all consumables on Earth and 25% of the world's GDP, America is the #1 economy on Earth with all the cards. We will not have that forever. It's time to squeeze Chinese heads into the wall now.
Well, hold on a second, Kevin. Well, I hear you, but hold on. If we're talking about people, the average consumer, not necessarily the head honchos of businesses all across the globe, can they withstand the pressure of that sort of tax on the goods?
It's short-lived. There will be
but what's your timeline compared to, you don't know the average American's timeline, what they can actually survive. There's people right now who can't survive
400% tomorrow morning, cheese on an airplane to Washington to cut a deal.
We're just getting some breaking news, and I'm actually just seeing this for the first time, and you may not know because you're out talking to me, but I'm hearing that House Speaker Mike Johnson just pulled tonight's expected vote on the Republican budget blueprint. There have been a number of Republican holdouts on this, despite the president's...
car in America, and we send it to Europe, we are charged 10% tariff on the American-made car. When you have a European-made car that comes to the U.S., we charge them 2.5% in a tariff, right? So why is that fair? Why do they charge us more for the American-made car than we charge them for the European-made car? And so the president understands fundamentally that it's unfair. And so I think if you listen to reciprocal trade, reciprocal tariffs, the effort is to bring tariffs down, bring barriers down. But no one wants to do that because they all access the biggest market in the world, ours, without paying anything. And we want to sell our great American products by our great American manufacturers overseas. They put barriers up. And that's fundamentally unfair. And by the way, you can see it rattles the market. But the president has the heart and soul to go, you know what? I'm willing to take a little bit of that rattle and make sure that we stand up and fight for the American worker, the American company, and we're going to bring fairness back to trade. And if you're not going to be fair to America or our workers, you're not going to access our market. Or if you do, you're going to pay a lot.
فقرار قصف تل أبيب والقدس وديمونة وعسقلان وسدود وبئر السبع وما قبلها وما بعدها من مدننا المحتلة أسهل علينا من شربة الماء.
كما قال أبو عبيدة أن رشقة صاروخية من 250 صاروخ على تل أبيب أسهل عندنا
So Brent, I got something for you, man. Here we go. Check this out.
Eastman, what's your position? 090 at 180 miles. Yeah, we're coming in left. 3 MiGs dead ahead, coming down the left side. I'm going after him.
Brings back memories.
I'd enjoy that, man. My favorite F-15 pilot, Brent Beecham, is with us this morning. Welcome to the SCIF. We're going to bring some information to you today. You're not going to get anywhere else. As long as Brent doesn't go Rambo on me, I kind of a flashback to the Vietnam days. But how you doing, my friend? Everything good?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, that's cool. So this is the SCIF. I'm L Todd Wood, your host. This is Brent Beecham, our Armed Forces.press contributor, former F-15 pilot, the U.S. Air Force and the Gulf War. And this is your mission brief. How successful are the Yemen airstrikes going? We're going to dig into that with a guy who would know, Brent Beecham. 400% tariffs on China. You saw Kevin O'Leary talk about that. We're going to talk about that later in the show. Europe wants to save democracy by destroying it. And the bond market vigilantes are back. This is a favorite topic of mine, and I want to talk to Brent about this as well with interest rates. And Zelenskiy says no elections. So hard to believe. So Brent, Yemen, the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy has been pounding targets in Yemen. And let me show people where that is. This is Diego Garcia, and then Yemen is up to the top left at the bottom of the peninsula there. But Diego Garcia is very nearby where they've moved B-2 bombers. What you've been doing a little looking into this. What's going on? What are the targets? What assets are they using? How effective is it? All of that, do you know?
Right. Yeah. So I think the shift in targets has been from in the past, say under the Biden administration, they were targeting launchers, they were targeting infrastructure and so on, and tried to avoid civilian casualties and so on. So what's happened recently is I think they've taken a page out of the Israeli playbook,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going after leadership now. And so
kind of a decapitation kind of strategy.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that they've been using a combination of different types of aircraft. They redeployed the B-2s to Diego Garcia. I've seen some information about strikes from the B-2s. And then you have, of course, the F-18s that came off of the USS Harry Truman. I saw some information they were using JSOW for the first time, which would allow them to launch from.
What's that for our military ignorant audience?
The Joint Strike.
I put you on the spot.
Yeah.
It's a weapon.
Joint standoff weapon, and it has a 63-mile launch capability, so they're able to launch from the Red Sea without overflying Yemen.
So fire and forget kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's GPS guided weapon. And so they're using that. I've seen in the last few days where they've taken out homes of known leaders of the Houthis. And so that's been a shift in strategy. And I think that if you look at what's happened particularly over the last 6 months, the fall of the Syrian regime, the decapitation of the leadership of Hamas and with Hezbollah, I believe the Iranians now they're down to this one last group, and basically Trump said every shot fired by the Houthis is a shot fired by Iran.
Well, I saw some Iraqi proxy army were leaving the area, and there's been reports of Iran removing officials from Yemen. Right. But the question is, are they still supplying them? Do you have any idea about that? They have to be, right? Or do they have indigenous weapons facilities there?
No, I think that's all supplied by Iran, but they may have a stockpile that's sufficient to continue for a bit. But the truth be told, I've been following more how that applies to what's going on in Israel, and they had some ballistic missiles fired, a few weeks ago. There was a UAV that was shot down in the last couple of days, but they really haven't been a very effective in attacking Israel,
Mhm.
and I don't think they've had much luck against shipping. So they're waning in their influence, and I think that's probably a direct result of the Iranians pulling support and Trump going after their leadership.
Well, the Trump pressure, right? I mean, how many their carrier battle groups are there? I think 3 now, or on the way.
There's 2. So it's the Harry Truman and then the Carl Vinson's on the way. Carl Vinson's going to be put in the North Arabian Sea, which can go either way. They could go after Yemen, but more likely that's a direct threat to Iran. The B-2s are obviously a direct threat to Iran, and then they've deployed F-35s, A-10s, and the THAAD missile to Jordan. So the forces are lining themselves up. Trump said yesterday, or in the last few days, he said any attack on Iran would be integrated with Israel. So it's a real threat. I think, again, he plays cards tight to the vest.
Yes.
And I think the threat may be enough. And if he abandons the Houthis, then maybe that's the first sign that they're backing down. I think their regime is in great jeopardy from all kinds of perspectives.
So why would they move A-10s to Jordan? I mean, that's a ground attack. I mean, are they expecting some kind of what would that be? Do you have any just a show of force?
Yeah, probably. I didn't understand that. I saw that a couple of days ago, and I didn't understand what that was. It could be that they're looking at forces along the border with Iraq, or maybe they're going after some of these missiles that are being deployed with Iraqi militias.
No, that may be, yeah.
It's a really good place to be able to strike really, strategically with an A-10, because it's a very low threat environment.
Yeah, it can survive. There's been no press. Why is that? I mean, really, literally no press. You haven't seen, I mean, I've got one video here. I'll just play this real quick. This is a bomb going off in Yemen. Not much of that's, stuff like that is really kind of all you see. And there was this that came out with a fortress that got hit, maybe some B-2, carpet bombing kind of stuff. But there's been no press. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, you have to wonder. It's either a combination of kind of a blackout from the Department of Defense, or more likely mainstream media trying to downplay the success of Trump strikes on the Houthis. That's probably more likely.
Yeah. So so back to the tactical stuff, are the B-2s launching this standoff weapon as well, or is it more just the fighters? Do you know?
They would be using GPS guided weapons. So it's they're able to hit multiple targets on any given single strike. So that's given that they're stealthy, they can overfly without having to stand off.
GPS, everything's guided off that. I mean, that's the linchpin, right? I mean, if the Chinese or the Russians take GPS down, I know we've got Elon, and maybe there's something he's doing secretly to keep that up in the sky. But I mean, I see that as a big weakness. I think we're, you and I used to be finger on a map. Now everything's computerized, right?
Yeah. I worked for Rafael in Israel for a while, and all the weapon systems that they were developing at the time took in account that GPS may be denied, and maybe even denied not by an enemy but by the U.S. So they always combined some additional navigation capability that went along with that, and I think that's probably the smart way. And I think this played out in the Ukraine war, where the GPS guided weapons have been ineffective, and they've had to back up to the ATACMS, which was the previous system to the HIMARS, and the ATACMS doesn't rely strictly on GPS. So that's been the backup.
Learned, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that what, an INS in there or something, or what is on those warheads?
Yeah, I think that's probably, it may be an INS system. That's Army stuff. So
inertial nav. Yeah. Good old gyro.
Yeah.
Brent, we'll be right back with Brent Beecham. Stick around with the SCIF.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is Alp World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have the card, throw it in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the Alp. And 4, but that seems honestly like a lot. 3 now, but it's good. These pack a punch that, for a normal nicotine brand, it'd be like 8. We think 3 is fine. Next one. Again, 4. Let's throw 3 in just to keep it fair. Okay? There you go. So you can see you can get fast at this. And really, it's just a matter of repetition. This is kind of the assembly line that, Henry Ford devised so long ago.
Tucker, stealing all the applicants.
So, Brent, I'm really interested in this whole Middle Eastern situation. You got Turkey coming down from the north. I think Netanyahu's worried about Turkey. Trump is trying to find a deal. Will Israel ever accept Sunni Turkish air bases, like at the T4 air base or something like that? I mean, that's what Turkey wants, right? I mean, they've tried to move material there already. Israel bombed the base. What do you think?
Yeah, they're supposedly they're meeting now in a neutral third country to discuss basically the division of Syria into 2 spheres of influence. So,
yeah,
I suppose that puts Turkey and Israel, if you're dividing the country up into 2 halves, it puts them in potential for conflict. And Turkey, Erdogan has desired to recreate the Ottoman Empire, and I think in doing that makes him more likely to try to confront Israel militarily, and he's not had a place to do that, and now he obviously would.
Yeah, that's interesting because Trump is the peacemaker. It's really the crusades all over again. You've got the Sunni Muslims attempting to, take over the whole area once again. It's fascinating to watch, and I hope Trump can work a deal. What about Gaza? It doesn't seem like Hamas is going to let these hostages go. It just doesn't seem like it to me. I mean, I don't know if it's revenge or they just don't want a deal or what. I mean, what do you think?
It's a death cult. and they see this as a way to stay in power. The interesting thing is whether this is contrived on the part of the people in Gaza or not, but there have been protests against Hamas and calls for the release of the hostages from Gazans who are, I think, just frankly tired of the war.
Yeah, there's been some protests. Do you think those are real?
That's the question. I think they may be, and I've seen where they had some Hamas policemen kill somebody, and they took this guy out. Civilians took him out and executed him.
Yeah.
So I think they're losing. I think they're losing control in Gaza a bit. But there's a long way between that and being thrown out of power.
Yeah.
I don't know who comes in. The war's continuing. You look at, I've seen video of, like here's before the war, here's after, and there's whole parts of Gaza are just absolutely flattened.
Yes. It's rubble. Yeah.
I don't know how you rebuild it with people in place. I mean, were they going to live in tents while you're trying to rebuild the infrastructure? I don't get it.
Well, Witkoff was saying, I mean, look, you don't know where explosives are. It's not dangerous. It's not, I mean, it's very dangerous. It's not safe. So you can't even build. You can't even get rid of the debris.
Yeah.
Right. So he's like, you got to get people out of there. I mean, it's going to take, in his words, 25 years to really, I mean, it's fascinating to watch. Let's move up to Lebanon. Hezbollah seems weak, but they're trying to rebuild, and Israel's trying to stop it. I've seen some reports this morning that there were new facilities to build weapons or whatever up near Beirut. Any insight there? We had Yifa Segal on yesterday, and it was interesting, her take on everything, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, Israel's continued to strike targets. Every time they see a violation, they've bombed them. Again, absolute silence in the press. You don't see it. And it's really, I mean, considering, just say back 2 or 3 years ago, any Israeli airstrike would be a UN Security Council, resolution to call for the end of violence, and absolutely no calls for any kind of stopping, because I think everyone understands at this point the stakes, and it's an opportunity for Lebanon to free itself from Hezbollah. It's an opportunity for Gaza to free itself from Hamas, and frankly, Iran is on its heels, and and we have the right president at the right time who could change the face of the Middle East.
I mean, the
that's encouraging.
Bright.
Yeah,
the future is bright. I mean, if you can solve these conflicts, and I'll be honest with you, I don't want a war in Iran. I've been vocal about that. I don't want my kids over there, and that's a daddy thing, I guess.
Yeah.
I do think that a deal can be made, and as I've said many times, it can be taken down from the inside, which I think is the preferred. But our government has not supported that option for years, which I find really disturbing. Let's talk before you got to go real estate, bond market. The 10-year was all over the place yesterday. How do you build buildings and borrow money to build buildings when you got that kind of volatility?
That's a good question, and I think that there's been a real pause. And my wife is a residential real estate agent, and just anecdotally, she's like number one in her office, and she is like way off of her numbers.
Really.
So I think all across the board, anything that has to do with borrowing money right now is a little bit crazy. We're still able to borrow money. We're backed by a big family office, and so they're the overriding thing for these like regional banks is deposits. So anytime you can wield deposits into a smaller bank, those banks are able to lend money. The big JP Morgans of the world, I don't think they care so much about that, but
especially the small business stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of almost an irritant to them, right? In many ways.
Yeah. So I think it's really pinpoint, things that are smaller deals are able to go through. I think a lot of really, really big deals have to kind of sit back and wait and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And people are all worried about tariffs, and they're like, oh, what are we going to do about steel tariffs? And I'm like, 80% of steel used in America in construction is recycled steel. So
Really?
it may go, yeah. So it may go up because, the steel market goes up as a result of the tariffs, but it's not going to go up as much as the tariff is because we're just recycling the steel.
So on the residential side, back to your wife, so she's just not seeing any transactions or new construction or what? And that is because yields are higher?
Yeah, I think everybody, and I think it's just even buyers are waiting around going, and what are we going to do next? Or am I going to lose my job? Or, I think it's just a pause generally across the board. And I don't think it's interest rates. And I don't even think it's new construction or even, there's a tightening of, there's not that much inventory right now, but that's been an ongoing thing. That has nothing to do with recent events.
Yeah.
I just think in general, people are kind of hesitant to do anything right now.
That's really interesting. Well, thank you, Brent. I really appreciate your insight. It's always good to have you on from the military perspective and also the real estate development issue. So we will have you back down the road. Thank you very much, my friend.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye. The bird flu is circulating. We're getting more and more press, more fear mongering, more warnings about this. First, let's start with that. What say you on?
Well, what I say is it specifically is not circulating. It's in animals. There's one human, maybe two transmissions, no human-to-human transmission. And stand by, everybody. If there is some sort of sudden human-to-human transmission, you should immediately be suspicious that gain of function was involved with that. Just the fact that they're taking an animal virus and going nuts on it in the press and talking about it all the time, that to me leads me to believe that they have concerns that somebody is doing something with that virus, because this would not happen naturally, in my opinion.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
These food prices are going to keep going up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah,
where you're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I'm L Todd Wood. That was Brent Beecham, one of our really good contributors here at CDM, former F-15 pilot and real estate developer. So he brings a lot of expertise that I value and trust. He's also a classmate of mine at the U.S. Air Force Academy. And so we've known each other for a long time. At the top of the hour, we have Martin Elizalde. He is an Argentine attorney, very knowledgeable on AI and corporate structures around AI. And we're going to talk about tariffs in AI and how that's going to impact all of the stuff that's going down in the markets and with the Trump administration and with the tariff regime all over the world. So stay tuned for that at the top of the hour. I think you'll really enjoy him, especially our business interested folks, which we're trying to grow. By the way, in the Biden administration, we used to do a lot of financial reporting, and we used to report on all the leading economic indicators that would come out every morning and try to read the tea leaves on the markets and really discern what was being reported. But then we realized really shortly in the Biden administration that everything was fake and that they were juicing the jobs numbers. They were juicing everything, and then they'd show a huge jobs increase. And then 3 months later, they'd show a $800,000 revision down to the real level. So we stopped reporting economics during the Biden regime. We stopped reporting really on the markets because I didn't understand that. I'm a former bond guy. I didn't understand the markets. And you had a lot of hedge funds also back out and say, it's like during the Y2K and the internet boom, people just said, I don't understand this and I'm going to back away until I do. And so that's kind of what we did at CDM on financial reporting. But we're coming back because this is going to be really critical. And we've started launching at least a daily market update in the morning. And we're going to drop a lot of good business news and stuff that you're not going to find anywhere else, and really good insight. If you go to CNBC and others, Bloomberg's a little better, but it's really just filler. A lot of it, Mad Monday, Jim Cramer kind of stuff. We're going to try to bring you really good insight, and we're going to grow that effort again. So look out for that. As I mentioned, I'm a former bond guy, and back in the day, I would have countries sitting on the emerging market desk at that time at a firm in New York. We'd have countries and corporations come to us and say, look, we want to float a few $100 million bonds in the market. And that's, they want to borrow money from the bond market from investors. And they'd be priced out, or the customers just wouldn't buy the bonds at any price, meaning they're shut out of the financial market, shut out of capital markets. If you've ever been shut out to get a loan from the bank, that's kind of what they were experiencing. And that really woke me up. And that experience over years, seeing all that, and then seeing the U.S. government just recklessly spend money. And this is back at the end of the first decade of the 21st century. And then I left Wall Street in 2011. But all the time there, I was traveling all around the world, and we would do business in offshore jurisdictions and just kind of harvest all the trading on these islands that had 300 or 400 banks on them, like Cayman or Bermuda or Guernsey, Jersey, Hong Kong, etc. And I started just writing stuff that I saw, and I wrote a book, a historical fiction, but it really goes into what is happening in the bond markets and how this is all impacting you, your mortgage, your car loan, everything, and your prices, because everything's tied together with interest rates. As James Carville said, when I die, I want to come back as the bond market, because it's the most powerful force in the world. And there's a term, bond vigilantes, which we'll talk about here in a second. But currency is just I think it's, and the reviews are off the charts. There's over 500 reviews on Amazon, and I think it's like 4.5+ stars. But it's historical fiction, but it ties into all the past and then what's going on today. And I say this is so prescient a book. Everything that is written here is happening and about to happen. And you can find this at historyofbooks.com. They're just re-released. The first in the Connor Murray series. There are going to be 2 more, and then another novel I wrote released in the near future by History of Books. You can go to ltoddwood.com, and I'll get you a signed copy. But if you love that feeling of not wanting to go to sleep because you want to read a little bit more, that is currency. And people tell me I felt like I got a degree in finance and enjoyed a great novel. So check it out. Please support us. It's a great way to support CDM and free media with currency. ltoddwood.com or at historyofbooks.com. As far as the bond market is concerned, it's based on economic data, and there's been a lot of concern that we're in an inflation area, and the CPI came out this morning, Consumer Price Index, and it fell the most in 5 years. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. So everybody's worried about prices going up. In actuality, prices are going down. We put out an article on the Georgia Record by Alicia Houston, a West Point grad and real estate agent in South Atlanta, real estate professional, I should say. She's more than just an agent. She knows the markets, but she's saying everything is going down. So this is really something to watch. You may be into more of a deflationary environment. Of course, the Fed doesn't want to lower rates because they want to keep rates high to hurt Trump, because he's got to refinance $7 trillion in debt over the next few months. And this is going to be really critical as to how that gets done. The bond market is going to be really instrumental in that. We were down to around 3.8% on the 10-year, the U.S. 10-year bond. You got to look at the yield curve and where the financing levels are over the period of years, how long you go out. And the 10-year was showing 3.8 just a few days ago, but after all this market pressure, it jumped up to 4.5, which is a massive move to the high yield on the high side on the yield, but that means a massive price drop in bonds. So people lost a lot of money. And that's why Trump was a little scared. We showed in the cold open a little bit of this drama that was going on at the White House. They were looking at the markets, and they said that essentially the bond market pushed them. They were going to do this anyway, but it kind of pushed them into doing what Trump yesterday, where he gave a 90-day pause and dropped all the retaliatory tariffs down to 10% for 90 days, and on anyone who wanted to make a deal, and didn't escalate. So that was really important, but the 10-year dropped to 3.8, then it cranked up to 4.5. Now it's back to around 4.3 right before we started as to where that is. Really, really, really important. So inflation is dropping. It's not going up. And the whole thing about the bond vigilantes, this is Bloomberg. Bond vigilantes make their presence known at the White House. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The bond vigilantes are people who are the bond market that when you make stupid financial decisions as a government or a corporation, the bond market takes its revenge in hiking interest rates. There's a saying on Wall Street that interest rates are low until they're not. And the bond vigilantes are what do that. It's essentially bond traders, and they say, we don't like what you're doing. We think you're irresponsible. We don't think you're going to be able to pay your bonds back. So we're going to charge more for that risk of loaning you money. And so interest rates spike. And yesterday was an absolutely perfect example. And this didn't happen for the last decade because the Fed was involved in the bond market as an active participant and bidding on bonds, meaning buying bonds, keep prices high and interest rates very low. I mean, basically zero for the last 20 years. And that's what Obama did, was have a very political Fed to come in and keep interest rates extremely, extremely, extremely low. And so the bond vigilantes are back, and the Fed doesn't seem to be as active, although there's a lot of nefarious behavior going on at the Fed. So we're going to take another break. We'll be right back. We're all going to watch all of this information. We're going to be very financially focused over the next indefinitely as the Trump administration rolls on, because this is all going to be highly, highly important, and we're going to educate you so you'll be the smartest around the water cooler. So we'll be right back. Thank you for joining the SCIF. Today we have Martin Elizalde at the top of the hour, Argentine lawyer on AI and tariffs. And then at the end of the show, we got a real treat for you. I won't tell you what it is. We're also going to play the rest of that Eric Prince interview here in a second. So, because everybody's asking for it. We played the first few minutes the other day. We're going to play the rest. We'll be right back after this break.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our CDM.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. Welcome back to the SCIF. I want to tag along with that Advisor Metals ad we just did there. If you go to cdmmetals.com, you can fill out a form there. It's basically your contact information, and the team at Advisor Metals will contact you. You also get your free precious metals investing guide by doing that. But these guys are professionals. We've checked into their regulatory background. The leader of the firm, Ira Bishotsky, is the only guy regulated by in the gold sector by the Commodities Future Commission. So you got that moral and regulatory backing. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians. He's a great guy. He's a patriot. He's not going to sell you. He's going to talk to you and see what your needs are and see if he can fill it. He may not be able to, but if you go to cdmmetals.com and fill that out, he'll get back with you because right now, if you've got assets, there's a lot of risk in the financial markets, a lot right now. And we could go down a lot more. We've already down into bear market territory, essentially. The NASDAQ hit, I think, 19%, biggest drop since 2018. We could see a lot more as this whole world financial system is revamped and restructured. There's going to be some pain, and Trump even said so. He doesn't care about the stock market. He does care about the bond market. Obviously from yesterday, as we showed with the bond vigilantes. But if you've got some assets, whether, a lot of people roll their 401k into their IRA and then manage it themselves. If you've done that, you can talk to Advisor Metals and put a portion of your portfolio, and you can figure it out with him, into precious metals, and you literally own the metals. They're at a depository to hold them for you. You can go visit them if you want. And if you've got assets like cash or whatever that you want into something that's going to hold its value as the U.S. dollar may devalue or extreme volatility in the markets and fiat assets could crash, precious metals may be able to save the day. So we got Martin Elizalde at the top of the hour. I'm going to play a little bit more of the interview with Eric Prince. We played a little bit of it the other day, but I'm going to finish this up here as we wait on Martin to come in. So here you go. So I heard you on another podcast say that there's a switch on the phone to like disconnect the battery. And
yeah.
Because a lot of every phone now, even if you turn it off, you're still tracked, right?
Right here on the side of an unplugged phone, there's a kill switch, which physically separates the battery from the electronics. Just like in the old phones, you used to pull the battery.
Yeah.
That's what that does. So we can air gap the battery from the electronics, and so that off means off.
So tracking is a huge issue geographically, geo tracking with
with the
from the GPS and also the the triangulation, all of that, and law enforcement is using it. Even you can go buy the data. You can't actually tell who it is, but you can the stuff they did in Georgia with the movie from I forget the
mules.
Yeah. So I mean, you can track people very accurately. What's the solution to that? Because if you turn off your phone, I know it doesn't do that, but if it's on, they can still track it, right?
An unplugged phone doesn't have an advertising ID. We literally don't have one.
Interesting. So therefore, they can't track you geographically as your phone moves around, or if they buy that data.
The ad ID, right? So
Sorry, excuse my ignorance. I'm just trying to
an advertising ID is like a 32-digit alphanumeric code,
right?
Which is assigned to your device.
Mm-hmm.
And as that code on the phone and the phone is interacting with towers, it makes it very easy to track the unique breadcrumb trail of that device.
Yeah.
If you don't have one, can't do that.
Interesting. So next question, do you believe general officers, let me get rid of that. Sorry about that. Do you believe general officers get enough training knowledge on joint operations? That's a question from the field.
Joint operations, I think more than that, I think general officers need some actual business and cost accounting experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've completely lost the plot as to what things cost. And ultimately, warfare is still about what is affordable. You can fight all you want, but you have to be able to afford to fight. And so I would insist on some accounting and a bit more actual business interaction, and not defense contractor interaction, but normal logistics, manufacturing companies, A. B, in joint operations, yes. I remember my dad used to, at his old business, he incentivized, the bonuses were based on individual performance. Some was it on company's performance, but a third of their bonus was how they performed as a team. And so by holding that over their heads and rewarding people when they actually do cooperate, and that speaks to, they should probably change how fitness reports and evaluations are done, so that maybe it's more of a group write-up, that if you are in a joint environment, how well did you contribute to the overall effort versus the inflationary kudos that are included in the modern day fitness reports.
That would really change the input to the OPR or OER if you had other. Wow, that would be interesting.
But if you want, but here's the thing: people respond to incentives. There's really no incentive. Look, I in my limited time in the military, and I'm sorry to dish on the Air Force, I found Air
I worked
Force.
for the Army, really. I mean, I wore an Air Force uniform, but go ahead.
I found the Air Force to behave like an armed Air Force union, like an armed airline union.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of reasons that they didn't want to do their job, instead of just saying, "Hell yeah, let's go. There's a plane. Just find a way to make it work." That was not my experience as an active duty guy, some time in the reserves, and then as a contractor interacting with the Air Force all the time. We got to where we specifically negotiated our contracts to not depend on the Air Force at all. We said, hell no, we'll organize all our own lift, everything. We want to be responsible for it. We don't want to depend on the Air Force because we just found them so difficult to work with. That's my experience as a contractor. I would imagine many active duty people have the same problem. I know the Navy, the SEAL teams have that problem with the Navy. If they need a submarine to put an SDV on or whatever, it's the territoriality of services is it must be broken down.
Oh, completely agree. You know, I had a general at the Air Force Academy tell me when I wanted to go fly helicopters, he's like, I didn't spend $500,000 for you to go fly a helicopter. I mean, the fighter pilot mafia is definitely a thing. And that's unfortunate because I actually saw that in soft aviation as well, because you had competition between the Army Rotary Wing and the AFSOC and all that. And that led to not the best solution for the troops on the ground.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is ALP World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have the card, throw it in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the ALP.
I like having deployed thousands of people and aircraft to support them. that I find that making them bunk down in the same areas and making them interact all the time is very healthy. And those personal relationships, interactions, breaks down a bit of the tribalism.
So this question we've kind of gone over a little bit, but I don't know if you have anything else to say. What does the future infantryman look like with the invention of swarm hunter-killer drones? This is from an Army guy.
Well, again, the RF signals, the amount of RF energy that the average U.S. military person puts off in the field now is frightening.
Yeah.
And so until they tighten that up, they're nothing but a near target or far target. So,
that goes back to the Vietnam days. I mean, it was very, the Viet Cong would just hang out around the airfields and listen to all the maintenance guys on their walkie, on their bricks talking to, we're launching the whole flight, that kind of stuff. I mean, this has been a problem in the U.S. military for decades.
Yep. And we assume what was the dominance or the asymmetry of power that the U.S. enjoyed previously will continue, and that's not the case. And they're going to be schooled that in the most brutal way, I'm afraid. So learn now and prevent that. So the infantry of the future is going to be a quieter, meaning emitting less RF energy. Probably going to be even focused on EOIR stealth, right? So you have to really go back to camouflage, speed, mobility. And you're either going to have extreme mobility and speed or significant layers of armor, battleship level armor to move around the battle space, because the democratization of precision strike means that anything that's located can be targeted. So to be found is to get killed.
Interesting. And then there's another question. Would large-scale conflict result in EMPs and therefore back to man-to-man fighting, or will technology find a way to escape EMP threats? I mean, you just gave me an idea. If you're getting swarmed by drones, what if you had like a little mini EMP that can just destroy their electronics with a push of a button? I mean, is something like that on the horizon?
Not a terrible idea.
Yeah. Interesting. Next one. Do you see raids via Rangers Delta taking place in Mexico, Latin America anytime soon under the Trump administration?
I don't think so. I could see some drone use, probably some very small unit stuff. Call it, a Black Squadron, G Squadron, that kind of raid. I think the bigger presence that the U.S. gets, the more negative the reaction will be, because we've invaded Mexico twice.
Yeah.
1845 and Blackjack Pershing early in the 1900s. So a big soft push, a big obvious soft push would have a pretty negative counter reaction. But I think the Mexican people suffer under the hegemony that the cartels have, and so finding a way to really severely degrade the control they have on society is a good thing for the Mexican people. But you can't let the cartels kill a bunch of Mexican people in the process.
I read that you proposed some kind of alternative idea for the deportations. Any feedback on that?
No, I would say it was not alternative. It was just a supplemental logistics, because I think the fact is that the Trump administration is not deporting any more really per month than the Biden administration was. And so we wrote up that paper. It was myself and Bill Matthews, who was the chief operating officer of Blackwater. That was done in September, I think, already last year, long before the election, hoping that Trump was going to win, but also knowing that they're campaigning on deportations. We need to deport because there's 15 or 20 million extras. So if you're going to do 10 million, what does it take logistically to do that? And so we just did the math backwards to say, you need this many flights per day, this kind of detention facilities. You need this kind of volume of lawyers to do some kind of an express due process hearing. And this is how you got to detain them in the first place and the intel to find them. So we just worked backwards from the math of flying people out. And probably 85% of the cost of that document of the offer is just in flight logistics. So I think the total number was like $26 billion.
Yeah.
Because it's a staggering amount of flights. And so you think about all the people that came to America illegally, they paid criminal enterprises to smuggle them into the country to the tune of tens and tens of billions of dollars.
So what do you think is stopping the Trump administration from going to higher numbers? Is it lack of will? Is it lawfare? Is it money? Is it, what is it?
Look, the left will certainly try lawfare and to block any kind of effective deportation. They're running against the clock because you've got the midterms, and so what do you get accomplished before then? Look, I in the odyssey of this deportation discussion, I actually met with a senior DHS official who was in the room when Susan Rice said, "Of course, we're bringing in these tens of millions of illegals, and we're going to normalize them, get them the right to vote, and we will lock in political power for the Democrat Party." In the room and the White House when she said that. So don't listen to the Democrat bullshit. This is about power for them. That's all.
Of course. And if Trump is not deporting any more than Biden was, then that's going to be a reality in time, right? Yeah.
Novices argue tactics, professionals plan logistics. So we wrote it to say, if we're going to do this, do it.
Interesting. So thanks for joining us on the SCIF. We're going to have at the top of the hour Martin Elizalde from Argentina, who is an attorney, and I think you'll really enjoy his take on AI and tariffs. So we'll see him at the top of the hour. I'll be right back. The bird flu is circulating. We're getting more and more press, more fear mongering, more warnings about this. First, let's start with that. What say you on?
Well, what I say is it specifically is not circulating. It's in animals. There's one human, maybe two transmissions, no human-to-human transmission. And stand by, everybody. If there is some sort of sudden human-to-human transmission, you should immediately be suspicious that gain of function was involved with that. Just the fact that they're taking an animal virus and going nuts on it in the press and talking about it all the time, that to me leads me to believe that they have concerns that somebody is doing something with that virus, because this would not happen naturally, in my opinion.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
These food prices are going to keep going up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah,
you're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
Welcome back to the SCIF. We have a surprise treat for you later in the show after this interview with Martin Elizalde. We're waiting on him to come on. He's from Argentina, an attorney who's very knowledgeable, writes for a lot for the Miami Independent, miamiindependent.com, on business and AI issues, and he wants to talk about AI and tariffs. So I said, yeah, come on, man. So we're waiting on him to come on. We may have a time discrepancy, but I just texted him, so we'll see what happens. I want to talk in the meantime about the European situation. Germany is announcing a coalition government that wants to strengthen its democracy. And they're going to strengthen this democracy by destroying it, essentially. And that means passing laws to restrict transparency in government and to silence and censor voices and to ban certain parties from coming into power or even running for office. The Alternative for Deutschland, AfD, is the one in the news all the time. They're the biggest political party in Germany now, with about 24-25%, bigger than the other parties who are forming coalitions against it. The center right and the center left party is working against AfD, and they're going to try to ban them. I mean, we've been talking about this for some time, but the globalists can't lose Germany. They can't lose France. Excuse me, and they can't lose Zelenskiy in Ukraine. So they've got to keep these people in power, just like they had Biden, just like, Governor Kemp in Georgia and other corrupt leaders, Katie Hobbs in Arizona. They have to keep these people in power, because if they don't, guess what happens, what we're seeing with Trump. So we're hoping there'll be some federal response in the U.S. But in Germany, you could literally see the breakup of the EU. I was talking to another gentleman, let me bring that up, who sent me something last night, which I found fascinating. I'll just read this. The European Union is in panic, and there's about 20 more panics after this, on Trump's tariffs. Secretly, France and Italian governments are reaching out to Trump and want to create a bilateral trade agreement direct with the United States, with the European Union. And this is including wine and other products, including stock exchange agreements that affect their GDP. So you've got these European countries that are under the EU and its tyrannical regime, but they're looking to maybe do direct deals because like Macron in France is, going his own way and retaliating. So is Canada, but other countries may not want to do that. So there's massive panic over the European Union could fall apart, and countries want to make deals with the U.S. without the European Union Trade Commission, meaning they're strongly considering leaving the corrupt EU system. This is fascinating. And you see Hungary and Slovakia have been very vocal about this, but you're starting to see other nations get vocal about this. So we're going to stay on this story. And again, we're going to bring you things earlier than you're going to get elsewhere. And by the way, sign up for CDM.press or put us in your daily scan. You don't have to sign up, but go there daily, morning, noon, and night. You're going to get information like this morning. We had stories out way before anybody else on Ukraine, over the markets, over China. You're going to get information you're not going to get anywhere else. So CDM.press is the place to go. Sign up for our no ad subscriptions there. You can get all of our content. People love hopping between our sites from Florida to Georgia to Ukraine and not having any ads or pop-ups pop up on their phone. People love that. So sign up for our no ad subscriptions. Our CDM1 Rumble channel is growing nicely. Please continue to support that. And YouTube. Our CDM YouTube channel is growing. We were kicked off for years. They deleted all our videos. But we just came back on a few months ago, and we're trying to grow that channel. We don't live stream there because we can't talk about certain things. So we have to cut it before we upload it after the show because we've already got one strike there. And we want to continue to grow that in hopes that, like Twitter, you'll get some transparency and freedom in the near future. So we're trying to rebuild those numbers. So support us there. We're on all podcast channels. You can go to, check us out on anywhere. Just look for the SCIF, and you'll be able to download the show, and you can turn it up twice as fast if you like and listen to it quickly and get your intel brief for the day. But we're going to stay on the European story. And we have our show, Eurobites, which it comes out usually on Sundays, and it's not every week. And then we tape it on Sunday, and then it comes out a day or two later. But you can go to CDTV on CDM.press, top menu, and check out Eurobites, which is one of our, actually, people love this show. It's a few German guys, Austrians, spread all over Europe who just chat about European issues. And it's a beloved show. I wouldn't have thought it, but we get a lot of comments Love Eurobytes. Heart Eurobytes is the comment we usually get. So thank you for that. But we really delve into these issues, and we just put out one recently, so you can check it out. And so we're going to move on from this European story and talk about one more thing, and that is Zelenskiy today says that he is not going to hold elections this summer. We got the story up on cdm.press right now, and they are not going to hold elections because the war's still going. Now, you have to realize Zelenskiy is not a legitimate leader since well over a year ago. There were elections supposed to be a year ago. He said no, and he just stayed in power, and the parliament is also illegitimate. So you've got an illegitimate government in Ukraine, which Russia is saying, how can I, negotiate with a government that is not legitimate and has no real negotiating power? So that's why Trump is kind of X'd them out of the negotiations along with the EU, because they're all just pushing for more war. And there was, in this article, you can see an attack by Yermak, who is Zelenskyy's right-hand guy. Some people say they're more than just friends or colleagues, if you know what I mean. But one of Yermak's people came out with an attack on Congressman Spartz in the U.S., saying she's a crazy hysteric who needs to be sent to the madhouse. She is a shining example of how the Russian world turns people into effing idiots. Completely finished. So that's a little threatening, coming from the Ukrainian government against a U.S. official who has been criticizing the Ukrainian Zelenskiy regime. All of this is really disturbing. Europe is dying unless it gets saved by some other measures. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I've got a treat for you, so stay with us.
Okay, ready?
Ready.
So we're out in the field in South Dakota shooting pheasants, and we're coming out here to a Milo field you can see behind us, and I was throwing in an ALP. Someone else was using a tobacco product, and then somebody, and I'm not going to name names, pulled that out in public at a hunt. And so that's obviously yesterday. What we have here, ALP, is tomorrow, and we're going to make that official by symbolically ending the long reign of this product. Willie Robertson happened to be hunting with us. We don't have a mechanical thrower, but we do have former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. With an arm. Willie's got a 12 gauge. I've got my trusty 20, and we're going to see what we can do to usher out the Zen era. Yes! So, I should say, alppouch.com, for sale now, alppouch.com, usher in tomorrow a brand new world of nicotine pouches, the American Lip Pillow, on sale now.
Warning! This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
So welcome back to the SCIF. It looks like Martin Elizalde, the attorney in Argentina, can't make it today, so we'll have to reschedule that, but we'll do that, I promise you. So I told you I have a treat, so here we go. Brigadier General Robert Earthquake Titus. He just died, and I want to read you his bio real quick. Rarely has an American warrior's life been as varied and as engaging as Brigadier General Robert Titus. 32 military year career, 18-year-old Army paratrooper, then World War II, became an Air Force fighter pilot, flew a staggering 550 plus combat missions in the Korean and Vietnam Wars, shot down 3 MiG fighters, was a test pilot, did all the Century Series fighters in the 1950s, and that gave him his earthquake call sign. F-15 project manager, just an all-around fantastic American and military hero and Air Force veteran. Well, he just died. But I luckily got the chance to interview him last year. This book, by the way, on Earthquake Titus by Brigadier General Robert F. Titus by William B. Scott. I don't have a dog in this fight, but William's been real helpful to our Armed Forces channel. So if you want a really interesting book, I understand this is going to be given to all the Air Force Academy cadets, possibly, but pick it up and help Bill out. But I want to play the interview of General Earthquake Titus. It's audio only, but with me on there and not him, but you can hear his voice, and I think it's extremely interesting and a piece of history we don't want to forget. So here we go. We are honored on War Stories today to have with us General Robert Earthquake Titus. He goes back a long ways. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, and good day to you.
So you have a storied background. I want to just give our audience a quick overview. You were enlisted in the 82nd Airborne as a squad leader in 45, 46. You were commissioned in 49 as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force. Flew P-51s and F-86s in the Korean War. You were a test pilot in the F-100 series. And you flew F-4s in Vietnam, I believe, and downed 3 MiGs. Am I correct in all that?
Yes.
So can you tell me about flying the P-51? I mean, you know, I'm a rotor head, and, you know, I flew the Huey first, and it was just like a sports car. And I'm wondering if the P-51 or F-51 was the same way.
Well, it's slightly different, of course. I've flown the Huey, but the Mustang was my first fighter, and my checkout was pretty simple. I essentially was taken out and told to fly the airplane, and that was it. I flew them at Tyndall Air Force Base, making blips for radar controllers while they were training to intercept missions. And then I went to Luke to shoot gunnery. And then I went to Japan, and ultimately I got to Korea. And so I flew Mustangs, bombing railroad tracks and providing close air support for the Army and the Marines. And I did that until we essentially ran out of Mustangs, and my squadron was converted to F-86s. Actually, they split the pilots of the squadron into 2 groups. Some went to the 4th Fighter Wing, and the rest of us went to the 51st Fighter Wing. So I was with Gabby Gabreski in the 51st Fighter Wing at Suwon. So
what was the F-86 like? Was it, I saw one of your other interviews, you said it was very easy.
Yeah, it was a kiddie cart. Like riding a tricycle. It was amazing, because up until the time I checked out in the F-86, you weren't allowed to fly jets until you'd flown them, it seemed. Typical Air Force stuff. They catch me too. But my checkout was very simple. I think it was my 4th checkout ride when I was flying number 4 and discovered I was on a combat mission.
Oh, jeez.
There was no briefing, and you know, you're flying 4. Okay, you go out and get in an airplane and follow the other 3. But I realized it was a combat mission when we suddenly turned south at a high rate of speed, and then a MiG was apparently the target. The lead had picked up, but his radio had failed, and the MiG just zoomed out of the formation, went north. I saw him go, but there's no way to catch him.
Yeah.
So that was my checkout.
So the F-86 was armed with cannons. Was there any other armaments on it?
Well, I mean, it was capable of carrying bombs. We didn't, because we were doing intercept work and going up Yalu. We didn't do anything else. We sat with trip alert, and then sometimes we were scrambled. Most of the times we were not. Sometimes we were scheduled to fly, in which case we'd go up on a cap.
Right. Was there any missiles on the F-86 at that stage?
No, just 650 calibers.
Gotcha.
And the Mustang, I didn't finish telling you about the Mustang. I mean, you asked me about the Mustang. I think it's greatest airplane that was ever built. It was a joy to fly, to me.
Yeah.
It was a challenge for a lot of people, obviously, because they were dinging them right and left. But I didn't have any problem with it. I found that I was totally in control of it and felt comfortable with it, no matter what. Used to practice inverted spins and anything I could make it do. And
wow.
Pretty impressive airplane.
And it had the range. I mean, why was that? Was it because there was just extra fuel, or was the motor engine redesigned to be more efficient, or what? Because it was able to escort during World War II, right?
Well, they were able to get to Berlin when they started carrying external tanks.
I see.
Yeah. And but sometimes we had them, and most of the time we didn't, because we were taking off and hitting the railroads and then going to secondary targets, which were designated points of attack.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were prohibited from going to secondary targets because we were losing too many airplanes in an effort to tear up the targets that we were assigned to.
Yeah. I saw one of your interviews where you actually ingested some tree limbs coming over a ridge. Tell us about that.
Oh, I was flying number 2 with a guy by the name of Bob Herman, Red Dog Herman. Anyway, he was strafing a bunker on the ridge, and I was behind him, and I saw another bunker, and you could see them shooting at you. And I picked up that bunker, and he said, "There's another one atop the ridge," and he already passed. And so I pulled back a little bit and picked up that other, gave it a hosing, but then I realized I was trying to pull out, and it was a very close situation. I didn't realize it. I waited a little too long. Closed my eyes and pulled like hell and waited for the crash. It didn't happen. And when I got back, the crew chief was quizzically looking at the intake and frown on his face. And I got up and looked, and sure enough, there was a tree branch there. How'd you get that? I said, "Beats me."
So after Korea, you went into the F-100 series. I'm an Air Force grad, and there was an F-105 on the Terrazzo, and I always wondered what it would be like to fly that thing. I mean, it was just a fuel tank and an engine, right? I mean, essentially.
Yeah, it was a good high-powered airplane. It was designed to do everything anybody could think of.
Mm-hmm.
You even had specialized air intercept gun sights and so on.
Mm-hmm.
We used it for that. When I flew it in flight test, that was just, I did stability and control until Dick Slayton, who was then selected to be an astronaut, was doing the performance on another airplane, on an F-105, but I had the instrument at stability and control airplane. When he left, I had to finish the performance on his airplane.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a clean airplane, and mostly it was validating the contractor's data.
Right.
Checking out the damping characteristics and what have you. Normal stability and control stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was, a fast-moving airplane. I recall on one mission escorting with Phantoms and saying to the strike force, "Well, you want an escort, you better slow down." And we couldn't keep up with them.
Yeah.
And in Bitburg and in Spangdahlem, we'd fly equivalent missions. We had targets in France to simulate targets that we were going to hit in Germany. And the push-up point, you push it up to 600 knots, and they're at 500 feet and 600 knots.
Wow.
Smoking into the target, and you just go like hell on the deck. So,
right.
Hard to keep up with that airplane when it was on the deck going full burner.
There was a Bombay in the 105 too, right?
They built it with a Bombay, and that's why it got acceptance over the F-107, which in some instances had been perceived by others as a superior airplane. It did not have a Bombay or an internal carriage. It had a depression in the fuselage. But the weapon at the time was presumed to need to be protected in a Bombay to keep it from the elements.
Right.
But by the time we put the airplane into service, we were the first wing to put the F-105D into service at Bitburg in Germany. And next thing we knew, we were carrying the bomb externally. It put a fuel tank in the bomb bay and shut it off.
Huh.
We were carrying the T-20, the nomenclature of the bomb, but we were carrying it externally. So much for that.
So then you transitioned to Vietnam, flew F4s, am I correct?
Initially, I went to Vietnam to fly F-5s. We had the Scotia Tiger program.
Right.
It was a test program and later they decided to expand the size of the squadron and prepare the airplanes for transition to the Vietnamese. So the Vietnamese maintenance people would go to the States and learn how to maintain the airplane while the pilots learned how to fly it. And when that was in the process, I extended and went up to fly the out-country mission.
Gotcha. And how was that aircraft? Very similar to T-38, correct? Same airplane?
Yeah, F-5.
Yeah,
Just much like a T-38. It's been evolved out of the T-38. Had a couple of 50 caliber machine guns. That was F-5C. F-5 didn't have the guns.
Right.
But so we did a lot of work in Route Pack 1 and Route Pack 2 and Route Pack, around Benoit and the Delta region.
Mm-hmm.
Hitting targets as designated and providing close support when required.
And so when did you move to the F4?
In January of 67, I told them I wanted to go up and fly the F4 when they asked me what my next assignment, what I requested for my next assignment. And I said, I'd like to go up Da Nang and fly F4s. Well, you have to go back to the States and check out the airplane at Davis Mountain for a 3 or 4 month training program. I said, no. All I need is a recheck. I've flown the airplane before. I'd flown it for a week at Davis Mountain and got checked out completely. Went to the gunnery range and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I just went up there and they gave me an IP and we went out to get in an airplane and it was out of commission. The radar was open, and so we went to the spare and it was loaded with ordnance. And the IP said, "Well, we can't take that one." I said, "Of course we can. We can get rid of the ordnance." He thought we were going to jettison the ordnance, but I called an airborne command and control ship and got a target and went and dropped a bomb. And the IP said, "Now we can go off and complete the checkout." I said, "No, we got more bombs. I only dropped one." He didn't want to fly with me anymore. I was checked out.
So you had over 550 combat missions, about 400 of them in Vietnam, and you downed 3 MiGs. Can you tell us about that experience? It was all in one day. Am I correct or not?
No, a couple of days. We were not flying up around the Hanoi region very much. We were doing a lot of night flying into Vietnam and looking for trucks and so on at night. It was a ridiculous assignment because most of the guys couldn't dive bomb with sufficient accuracy under daylight conditions, under controlled range conditions, when you knew the winds and the weather was calm, etc. But 140 feet was qualifying. We were looking to bomb a truck. 140 feet wouldn't do it much damage. But that's what we did, and I wasn't too happy with that mission. But I wanted to go up on the escort missions or the strike missions. When the MiGs were not active, we'd fly the strike mission, whatever the target may be. And but on the particular day that I got my first MiG, we were escorting F-105s. I was flying number 3 because my boss had told me I couldn't. I'd been gone for 2 weeks to the fighter conference back in Nellis. And he said, we've changed tactics, so you can't leave. So I said, okay. And I got one of my flight commanders out of bed and said, "You're leading," and off we went. And we were heading down Todd Ridge toward the target, and I saw a MiG. So I told him I was bingo, I'm checked out. I don't recall what the words were, but there were code words you used. Anyway, it's essentially was, I say a MiG, I'm going after him. And it was a MiG-21, and we went around, and he went into a dive. There was a lot of karst in the background, and I knew I couldn't get him with a Sidewinder, and I was going to try an AIM-7 missile. If I'd only had a gun, I'd have had a chance at him much earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We were locked up and ready to fire, and my backseater is fire. I mean, got an expanding semicircle, we got the necessary radar tones, but in the meantime, somebody yells break, and I'm disciplined, so I laid it up on the side, full half stick, full bottom rudder, and the airplane snapped around, and I'm passing nothing but more F4s, so that MiG went the way of good health.
Yeah.
Then I saw another MiG and locked up on him with Sparrow missiles, and when I got all the information I needed with the backseater locked on, and I told him go bore sight, which meant that I had the pipper on the target and was able to lock on, and I fired a missile, and it didn't guide, and he screaming fire another. I did. It didn't guide. I thought I was going to have to ram him. In the meantime, he made a hard left turn, and he was again, the karst was in the background, but I fired a missile and it hit him in the wing root. So that was the one MiG.
What was it like to fly against a MiG-21? I mean, was it a threat or a good adversary or not?
Well, I think they were a good adversary. I was happy to take him on under any circumstance. I just wanted a shot at him.
Yeah.
And I wasn't concerned whether or not I had no concern that they were going to be able. Their tactics they took from the Russians. Attack at 6 o'clock and break off. So they're coming and firing the missiles, and that's what they did on the next time I was up. This time I was up with leading 2 flights of 4, and I was sitting high right watching the strike force of about 12 F-105s, and there were MiGs out there at my 1 o'clock. I saw a glint and picked them up visually, and my backseater got locked on, but they were not a threat to the strike force. They moved off, and I turned about 90 degrees to the right and decided I needed to protect the strike force, so I came back. And a little while later, 2 MiGs came in at 6 o'clock firing missiles. I before that happened, I jettisoned my external tanks because I thought there would be more MiGs around. And when I saw them over my shoulder, I just made a hard turn, braked left, and reversed as they overshot. One went up to a thin Cirrus deck as my missile went up his tailpipe as a Sidewinder. And then I saw the other one off to the right at 1 o'clock, and I started after him. And he realized he was under attack, so he started a hard left turn and a series of reverses and turns, etc. As I tried to get lead on him because he didn't know it, but I had an M61 external cannon. It was not coming. We had no gun sight, just a pipper.
Was that mounted on your wing, I assume?
No, hanging on the belly.
I see. Okay.
So anyway, finally he had to pull out of his dive after a lot of this back and forth as we get lower and lower. And I was aware of flak, but I wouldn't pay any attention to that. Finally, he had to start his pull out, at which time I put a pipper in front of him because I didn't know what kind of lead to take, and hosed him down, and apparently he got hit because he wings rocked and he hit the ground. And I came off and smoking around up there, minding my own business, when there was another MiG suddenly. And we scissored. And he headed south, and I was following him again. There he is, blue sky, got Sidewinders. In the meantime, my wingman had been screaming about being low on fuel. I'm bingo. I'm bingo minus. I'm no shit bingo minus. I said, head west, I'll pick you up. And so I gave up that MiG in order to
escort him back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the tanker deviated from his profile and came north, and he got on the tanker with only a couple hundred pounds of fuel remaining.
Wow.
I don't know where all his fuel went because I still had fuel. He must have been running around in afterburner with his speed brakes out.
Well, the F4 drank a lot of fuel, right?
Well, yeah, if you're in burner, you got two J79 engines, and you burn up a lot of fuel in a hurry.
Yeah. What was it like to fly that? Was it a responsive? Was it a maneuverable airplane?
And, first time I saw the F4, Bob Little, who was the chief pilot for McDonnell, brought it up to Edwards from St. Louis, and he was taxiing in. I looked out the window and said, "Oh my God, look at that thing!" The wingtips go up, the tail goes down. That's a monstrous-looking thing.
Yeah.
That was double ugly. But, it had to have some characteristics to make it work on a ship.
Yeah.
Aircraft carrier. But we fixed that in certain respects. We put a gun in it and lightened up the landing gear and saved some weight.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have to crash it onto the deck of a
right
carrier. Although that's how they taught you to check out in it. Hold it on speed until you hit the ground. Kaboom!
Yeah.
It's a 12,000-foot runway. Oh, why can't I let it smoothly land? Get a ground effect and hold it off and let it squeak on.
Yeah.
Same thing with takeoff. You have to have the stick full out 20 knots prior to predicted takeoff speed or some such mantra. And I said, why don't I just let it fly off when it's
ready? I hope you enjoyed General Earthquake Titus there. Thanks for listening. We got Martin Elizalde. He's going to be on shortly, and we finally connected with him. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Thank you.
Okay, ready?
Ready. So we're out in the field in South Dakota shooting pheasants, and we're coming out here to a Milo field you can see behind us, and I was throwing in an ALP. Someone else was using a tobacco product, and then somebody, and I'm not going to name names, pulled that out in public at a hunt. And so that's obviously yesterday. What we have here, ALP, is tomorrow, and we're going to make that official by symbolically ending the long reign of this product. Willie Robertson happened to be hunting with us. We don't have a mechanical fur, but we do have former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. With an arm. Willie's got a 12 gauge. I've got my trusty 20, and we're going to see what we can do to usher out the Zen era. Yes! So, I should say, alppouch.com, for sale now, alppouch.com. Usher in tomorrow a brand new world of nicotine pouches, the American Lip Pillow, on sale now.
Warning! This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
Well, I see Martin, but it says his devices are not connected. So we're still troubleshooting a little bit here. producing on the fly. Tucker put out a new ad on Alp. I'm going to run this just to buy us a couple minutes. We'll be right back.
I'll give you a plug for Alp right now. So if you talk about one of the worst companies that's out there,
America's greatest nicotine pouch,
America's lip pillow. But who is your biggest competitor?
That would be the Zyn Corporation.
Zyn. Do you know who owns Zyn?
I do.
So it's Philip Morris International.
Yep.
They are operationally headquartered in Switzerland. On their website to this day, I mean, you go on their website today, they have a massive diversity, equity, inclusion piece that is on their website. They have and I would say it's I'll call it the worst aspects of DEI, which can be quota systems, race-based systems. And on their website today, they say we're going to hire 20% of our people. We want to be Asian. Literally on their website, just 20%. They want 40% women. I mean, literally quota systems they have on their website today. But the other piece is that on their website, and this is a company that makes Marlboro cigarettes and Zyn and other things, is so they're like one of their big partners for Pride Month that's coming up is the Stonewall Org. And Stonewall Org is one of these LGBTQ plus organizations, and fine, you can do that, but like they are advocating for biological men to compete against women in sports.
But
This is what's crazy is that and I think this is the problem about where we're going is
what does that have to keep that out of my mouth? I mean, this is like
So we're still having trouble with Martin. I'm going to give it a few more minutes here. And so I'm going to bring up the Manhattan.press, which is our New York paper. Actually, that's not working either at the moment. Not sure what's going on. Anyway, a lot of problems today. Sorry about that. We're going to just go ahead and close the show because we're having some issues with Martin. I will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. And please come back and check us out 10 to 12 tomorrow Eastern. We'll be back on the SCIF. And sorry about today's technical issues, but it happens sometimes. He's in Argentina, and we'll just we'll have to reschedule. So see you tomorrow.